And now with the emergence of AI, I do see, the IT, the CIO, CTO role being so critically important in accelerating that change. So what we've done at Omnissa, we have co-sponsors for our AI transformation journey, and that is our head of R&D and me, right? So we are partnering really closely and approaching it as this is not just a technology change. This is a mindset shift and transformation for the organization. And what I love about this partnership is that both of us come at it from such different angles. And when we have a conversation, every day we have a conversation, and it sparks a new thought for me around, what are we going to do to enable our teams to use AI to augment, all of what we do today, but in a thoughtful and responsible manner.
You're listening to the Modern People Leader podcast, where we go behind the scenes with today's top HR leaders and work experts. We talk to them about how they've gotten to where they're at, what they do every day, and what they see coming next for the future of work. Hope you enjoy.
Hi, Suni. Welcome to the Modern People Leader.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Oh my God, we're thrilled to have you. I have gone deep on your background, and you have an incredible story. Yeah. All of the things that possibly find. I joke around with Daniel. I'm a big fan of hot wings. I think that's what it's called, right? Okay. And, he has a way of just finding these deep cuts on every single guest he has on that show. And so for me, I like to bring a little bit of that energy. So not too deep, but we hopefully have a few deep cuts. We have a lot to talk about. We have limited time today. So I'm going to jump us right into our first MPL tradition. We kick off every episode with what we call good news stories. It's a way to kick things off with positivity, share, work news or personal news or both. If you're having a particularly good week, we prefer for our guests to go first, Suni. But if you need a minute, we can. Daniel's always ready to go on this one, so I'm sure we can get something going.
Oh, I'm ready, but Daniel, I really want to hear your good news story.
Ooh.
Dang, put me on the spot. This is like the one time that I don't have something prepared.
That's fine. That's totally fine. I have a few, so I'm happy to go, Daniel.
You go for it, and I'll do some thinking.
Sure. I have a few actually, folks. It's really, for those of you who don't know me and some of you who do, my team always says to me, I'm not only glass half full, I'm glass half overflowing. So it's never hard for me to come up with a good news story because I hang my hat on those. We have a few actually where in short order, I don't know when your podcast is coming out. So hopefully I won't be stealing any thunder from our all hands next week, but we're going to announce our year-end recharge. So we'll be shut for the last 2 weeks in the year, where everyone has a chance to kind of recharge, and rethink and refresh themselves, which is fantastic to be able to do that as an organization. And we're a fairly new organization, right? We just carved out 2 years ago as a standalone business. So that's wonderful to be able to tell the teams. And we're also going to announce an enterprise-wide AI tool that we're going to deploy for most folks in the organization. We'll have some guardrails for some folks, depending on who accesses customer data, because that's important. But generally speaking, folks will have access to an AI tool, and we'll deploy it in the organization, which will be wonderful. I'm so excited about that. And in conjunction with that, we're also going to announce this concept called development days. So every quarter, we're going to have a day that's focused on development. And the first one's going to be focused on AI, actually. So, folks will come together. There's going to be peer-to-peer learning opportunities. Some folks outside the company that have done it successfully. We'll talk about it, what it means for our culture. And it's just going to be a fun event.
Lots of good news. Okay, I have one now, so I'll go.
Great.
I feel like over the last 5 or 6 years, Stephen and I go back and forth between being the ones that are like, coming up with the ideas. I feel like in the early days, I had a lot of energy, had a lot of ideas, and then, you get like stuck in the business and, doing all the things. And then Stephen joined full time, I guess like a year and a half ago now. Is that right, Stephen? And I feel like when Stephen joined, he brought a fresh set of ideas, and I've been doing some reflection like the last couple of months, and that's something that I miss. The ideating, the innovating, and coming up with new products for the business. And so I've made a goal for myself to carve out, let's call it 30, 45 minutes a week to think about new ideas for the business. And so today I did that and I'm feeling pretty energized. I feel like
Love that.
there's some good ideas to share with Steven. Got to put a little bit more thought development into it, but I'm getting pumped.
I love good ideas. That's great news. My good news, I'm going to go personal. My daughters have been jet setting with their mother. I'm divorced and we're in summer custody, and they have spent a couple weeks with their mom in Croatia and Greece. And not only have I had massive FOMO, because they're 16 and 14, like there was a time where like they would leave and then 2 weeks later, I'm just getting like one-liner updates on what they did because they can't remember anything. But now I'm getting like a detailed, like Instagram reel type of stream of photos. And it's like, oh man, Greece looks amazing.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I just really, really miss my girls. It's been a couple weeks now. And like, this is the very, very end of it. So they get back. I think they arrive tomorrow after. So super excited to have them back and spend some time with them. And
that was the quickest 2 weeks ever. I can't believe it's already been 2 weeks.
It flew by, y'all. Time is going by so fast. But Daniel and I also have small children. I also have a 5-month-old and he has a 1-year-old. And so we're in that rinse and repeat cycle where time is literally flying. Well, enough about us. I call this next story the Brene Brown question. Suni, tell us your story. I've gone deep, and so I know there is a great story behind, your professional journey and what led you to becoming the Chief People Officer at Omnissa.
Something we've noticed on the podcast is that a lot of HR teams are operating in reaction mode. A process breaks, a form is missing, payroll needs fixing, somebody's onboarding gets delayed, and before you know it, the entire week gets consumed by operational work. Jesse Vaughn, author for Built for People, calls this the difference between people ops and human ops. People ops is the infrastructure, payroll, systems, compliance, workflows, while human ops is the leadership work that actually shapes culture and performance, coaching, trust, team effectiveness. And the real opportunity isn't just making operations more efficient, it's giving leaders enough space to focus on the work that only humans can do. And that's where Intuit QuickBooks Payroll comes in. It brings payroll, time tracking, accounting, and team management together in one connected system, helping reduce the operational drag that pulls leaders away from their teams. And this summer, it's evolving into QuickBooks Workforce, expanding beyond payroll into a more connected system for the entire employee lifecycle. This will include hiring and onboarding, automating workflows for key moments like promotions and offboarding, clear visibility into labor costs and planning, a single place to manage payroll, time off, benefits, and performance. So instead of constantly reacting, teams can spend more time supporting their people. If you want to learn more, you can go to quickbooks.com/workforce. That's quickbooks.com/workforce.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's so hard to tell your story, right? Really quickly. So please hurry me up if I'm taking too much time. But I think in a nutshell, what I'd say is I love being a global citizen. I've lived in 8 countries and worked in 8 countries. And I've actually done my overseas experience, as we call it in Australia, with work. So I moved to all of these countries with work, with my companies at that point. And it's been the most fulfilling thing about my career and my life journey. The last trip around the sun that I made was to California from Sydney, Australia, which is home for me. I was born in Mumbai, but moved to Sydney to do my 3rd degree there and stayed on. So, did my professional career in Sydney, moved to other countries from there, but then moved to California now 16 years ago. So it'll be 16 years in July. I thought I was coming for a year and I overstayed my visit, clearly. But it's been fantastic because I had a chance to meet my husband here and we've now had a child. And to your point, Stephen, she's 4 years old. So I'm holding on to those wonderful moments.
Hold on tight.
Hold on tight. I know. From what you said, I was like, this is a good lesson for me. But from just to dig more into my professional journey, a lot of people will say, did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up, as a kid? And I wanted to be a jazz singer. I used to sing professionally. I play the piano and I used to do lots of musical theater. And that's what I thought I'd do growing up. And then I entered into HR. What a perfect transition, right? But it was something professionally that I wanted to do quite early on too. In my teens, I observed my dad and what he did. He was a leader of an organization. My mom worked full time too, and what I loved about my dad's stories were always about the people. The people on his teams and how he was so close to them and how he got so much joy out of them fulfilling their dreams. And it was something that I always listened to, and I thought, okay, what's a place in an organization where I can help people do that? And that was a natural progression into HR. And I entered the HR field through the strategy route. So my first job out of university, from doing HR at university, was to develop an organization strategy, align it to a global strategy. So it didn't come up the traditional route, either through talent acquisition or to HR operations. I came in through that strategy pivot. So that's something that I've always held close to me through my travels in HR. I see myself as a business leader first, and then an HR leader, and business a leader that focuses on people. So that, in a nutshell, is my career.
I don't know where we surfaced this in our research, but
Yep.
we found something that says your career philosophy is, or sponsors over mentors. And it
Hmm.
says your career philosophy is that mentors give advice,
Hmm.
sponsors take bets and open doors. And
Hmm.
every new challenge that you've taken was possible because someone took a bet on you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Is this accurate? Did you say this? And if so, like
Yeah,
who are
it
some
sounds,
of the,
it
who are
sounds very much like me, so I must have said it.
any sponsors throughout your career that you want to shout out?
Oh my God. I mean, innumerable. And should I mention names?
Yeah, please.
Okay. 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 Oh,
You'll
wow.
make their day.
That's great. I mean, I have so many, so it's hard to kind of go back. But, in the recent years, the two CEOs that I worked with at Navis, his name is Benoit de la Tour, and the leader at Cisco that I worked with, Ayman Saeed, who's now the CEO of BMC Software, would be two people that come to mind in CEO roles that I worked with as their chief people officer, who've been just amazing sponsors through my career. But I think in HR, folks like the person who was instrumental in me moving to the US, I have to do a huge shout out to him, Scott Slipey. He's done many CHRO gigs, and now he's consulting, and he does a lot of consulting assignments. He's actually at Bloomberg doing some work with them now. Scott Barkley, another Scott, who was my manager in Australia, who convinced me to move to California. I was like, I don't know, I like Sydney too much. It's too much of a good thing. I don't want to leave this. So those are some folks. Anne Marie Neal, who's always been in my life and in my career, and has moved me around and sponsored me into different opportunities. Yeah. So those are a few people. I mean, there's so many. So I hope I've not missed key folks. I'm sure I have.
Well, shout out to the Scots, specifically Scott Barkley, for getting you to the US, and eventually that led you to Omnissa. And before we get into the main topics, tell us a little bit about Omnissa. Like, if you had to give us 30-second elevator pitch, how would you
Yep.
describe to us about what you guys do?
Yeah, so Omnissa is the world's best secret. I will tell you that. We're not a very well known brand because we've carved out of VMware 2 years ago as a standalone business. What we do is provide an AI driven digital work platform that enables employees to securely access corporate applications, right? Whether it's from any device, virtual desktop, any device. And we've been around for a long time as a business unit of VMware, and then we carved out 2 years ago. So I truly mean it when I say the world's best secret, because not a lot of people know the name. It's not a recognized brand, but in the space that we play in, we're very well recognized.
And so we want to get into it. I love the first segment that we want to dig into with you. I think that my notes positioned it as the new HR CFO partnership is the
Mm,
HR IT partnership.
mm, mm,
And I think what's meant by that, or what that means to me, is like the traditional CFO CPO partnership, was such a tight, with people being obviously one of the most important assets, but also through compensation and benefits, also one of the largest expense line items, or employee related expenses being, a material part of company expenses.
yeah.
That was always such a critical relationship. And I'm a bit older than Daniel. And I remember a time like the very early days of HR leaders should be business minded, which it's kind of crazy that in 2005, like there was still a view that was like innovation in HR was to
Yeah.
be more business minded. And I remember like the playbook for that was go meet with the CFO, understand all the underlying
Mm,
business metrics,
mm,
understand the revenue engine, understand the key ratios and how, the mechanics behind those ratios, how that impacts the business. And then came AI.
mm,
I'll just say
mm,
that,
mm.
20 March 2023, ChatGPT makes, the LLM public and everything has been different since then. And I think that you can't pinpoint something more different than this emergence of the CHRO or Chief People Officer and CTO partnership. And so I want to start there and dig into what is your reaction to that statement that there's a fundamental shift happening in the nexus of power for with HR leaders and the ELT, and what's your view into the future? Like, is that really going to be the pivotal relationship, the chief people officer CTO relationship?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I always like to call it the three pegs of a stool, right? The CEO, CHR, and the CFO relationship, and these folks have a really tight relationship, driving and accelerating organizational culture and change and transformation and strategy, right? And helping folks to prioritize what's the most important thing about our strategy that we need to accelerate. And now with the emergence of I do see, the IT, the CIO, CTO role being so critically important in accelerating that change. So what we've done at Omnissa, we have co-sponsors for our AI transformation journey, and that is our head of R&D and me, right? So we are partnering really, really closely and approaching it as this is not just technology change. This is a mindset shift and transformation for the organization. And what I love about this partnership is that both of us come at it from such different angles. And when we have a conversation, every day we have a conversation and it sparks a new thought for me around, what are we going to do to enable our teams to use AI to augment all of what we do today, but in a thoughtful and responsible manner. So that is kind of the basis of how we are approaching AI transformation at Omnissa. When you think about all the rhetoric you hear, this one's laid off these many people and that one's done this, to create budget for AI. We are thinking about it is, how do we help our people and upskill our folks to get to the point where it just becomes a necessity in every job when you use it, not only from a productivity perspective, but you just get such a big uplift from it. Whether you're an engineer, whether you're a coder, whether you're an IT person, you're an HR person, we've just rebranded ourselves and we call ourselves People Experience. So it's PX. If I use the acronym PX, shout out to my team for coming up with the cool acronym. But whether it's in PX or legal or indeed marketing, we want our teams to understand the value that we're creating out of AI and the uplift we can create out of AI, with also having that mindset of using it responsibly, because we have large customers, we have a lot of customer data. So we're very thoughtful about how we're rolling this out. We're not going to be one of those companies that says, okay, we're just going to turn it on for everyone and away you go, right? We're going to think about it and be more systematic in the way we roll it out for our team. So one way that we are solving for that is also thinking about it from a use case perspective, right? What is the use case that's going to create the most value for you? We know the use case in amongst the coders and in R&D is like, there's no need to define it. Like, we all know the use cases are strong there. But for the other functional groups, right, whether it's PX or legal or marketing or sales, indeed, we're like, what is the most important lift that you can see that AI would give you long term, and how can it transform your work longer term? So thinking about the use cases from that lens and then saying, hey, we're going to just focus on these things in each of the groups.
Love it. And so going back to the partnership, it
Yeah.
sounds like you and your head of R&D, and what's
Yeah.
their name? Did you say their name?
Yeah. His name is Kyle Austin.
Okay, Kyle.
Yeah.
Okay,
Kyle.
so you and Kyle, you're working together all the time. And it sounds like, you're helping think through the communication of the value that people are
Mm-hmm.
getting,
Mm-hmm.
and putting the right systems in place to both give people the skills that they need, but also making sure you're doing it in a responsible way. And
Mm-hmm.
then the head of R&D, they're like the technical chops. Am I getting this all right? I'm just curious, like, what the day-to-day looks like and how you guys are partnering. Like, what are y'all's communication cadences? How are you, divvying up the work? I know I asked a lot of questions there, but these are the questions going through my head.
The thing, this is a really good question. I mean, we literally talk every day. So there's, we have an AI transformation team that is, very small but mighty team of four individuals in the organization, where they meet often and they, talk about use cases and prioritization and, which AI tool do we want to deploy, all of that good stuff, right? So we oversee, we sit on top of that team. But the way Kyle and I approach it is not so much from our individual functional groups. We talk about it, I see my role as a business leader, right? I don't see my role as an HR leader. I really see my role as a business leader. So the questions that I ask Kyle are around, like, how are we thinking about this from a responsible way, right? How are we governing it without putting too many guardrails where people feel constrained? And how do we keep our eye on it so we know that we're not going overboard, for example, with token spend and things like that, right? So token spends become a big conversation in the industry today, and we've seen a lot of companies say, oh, we just rolled out this tool, but we're not going to pull it back because it's becoming untenable for us from a financial perspective, from a cost perspective, right? So Kyle and I talk about the cost implications, the governance implications, the responsibility implications of customer data and using AI responsibly and thoughtfully, but also around, how can we transform the organization to we are definitely an AI first organization when it comes to our product. So how can we also, translate that and transform that within the organization for us to think organizationally of like an AI first team? So it's a whole bunch of things. So it's not restricted to, I'm not in the box of like, hey, I'm going to be this person here because I'm in HR. I only care about, oh, are we having development opportunities for people or whatever it is, right? That, you might traditionally think, these are business decisions and financial decisions and organizational decisions and people decisions. And they, both of us talk about them with equal interest. And it's not like, one has one swim lane and the other has another, which is what makes the partnership so great.
And so wait, you have an AI task force or committee, and did you say it's small but mighty? You said 4 people, four
For people.
employees?
For people.
Wow. And you have what, around 4,000 employees globally?
Yeah. Yeah. But we have,
Jeez, that is
yeah.
one of the smallest focused teams I've heard. And the great thing about small, though, is you can move fast. Small but mighty. You said it. And so when you say mighty, can you share with us some of the big wins that you have, or maybe a win that you are most proud of in terms of like a specific use case? You mentioned legal, or taking the obvious use cases and then going into various departments and understanding where you might be able to apply that learning to kind of a deeper use case. Can you share with us a little bit about maybe a
Sure.
couple of use cases?
Yeah, actually, so I will say, I would love to come back and talk to you guys in the next 6 months, because we've just started the journey on like functional groups and use cases. We have lots of use cases in the R&D team, around
Mm-hmm.
uplift from coders and the work that we do from a technical perspective. So lots of use cases there. The functional teams, we're just starting down the path of defining the use cases and, actually deploying a company-wide tool, which I talked to you about. So we'll do that. We're actually
Mm-hmm.
announcing that next week. So yeah, we're excited about that. So the time we've spent on doing that thoughtfully, rather than saying, hey, here's a tool, everyone go crazy.
Right.
We've actually spent the last month and a half really thinking very deeply about, let's run a pilot. So we have about 800 people right now who have access to the tool, and we're kind of looking at, what are the wins, how are people using it. And I can tell you a couple of wins in the PX space, a couple of wins in the marketing space, and maybe in the product management space.
And
So
and what's so
I,
what we definitely want to have you back in 6 months. We love kind of part two conversations. And I feel like there's a new category of
yeah.
the employee that is so curious and so skilled with AI that they literally come in, they do a job, and they make the job obsolete.
Mhm.
And then there's a new problem. and they go on. And I don't think I don't think AI orchestration engineer, anything like that really does this role justice. But we've heard of this profile,
Yep.
and I really do think that, in the future, we're going to want companies are going to be looking for more and more individuals like this, where the crazy thing is, as recent as 2 years ago, people were being fired for that, for going outside of the lane and trying to redefine things. And so that's super exciting. Before we move on, like, just looking back on the last 6 months, I'm sure y'all have done a lot of work. Like, what was the biggest lesson learned that you've had so far, just in terms of whether it's, critical success factors with, AI implementation with the product team, or
Mhm.
just maybe some behavior change requirements or challenges? Can you think of any, like, lessons learned that, like, for our listeners that are still on the fence or haven't really been able to push their journey forward, their AI transformation? Any lessons learned that you can share?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Firstly, I've been with the organization 5 months, so I can't go back.
Oh, that's right.
Which is actually an interesting thing, right? Because I'm relatively new to Omnissa, but I'm the newest person on the executive team, and the average tenure on the executive team probably 7 to 8 years, or even longer than that, right? So it tells you about the culture of the organization, where I've definitely felt very welcome and been able to, I feel, have been able to bring my value to the team, and that has been really embraced, which is really quite rare to have in my role, as a chief people officer, because often when you're a new member to an executive leadership team, there's a lot of stuff that you need to deal with to make sure that you're seen as part of the team, especially if the team has been around for a while together. So again, shout out to our CEO for creating that environment and that culture, and shout out to my fellow ELT peers for doing that, because I felt welcome from day one. But if I think about in the last, I would say in the last 2 to 3 months is where this conversation has really come to bear from an internal transformation perspective. Our product has always been AI first, and we've been down this journey for almost 2 years now. From an internal transformation perspective, over the last 2 to 3 months, what I've learned is small is better than big. A lot of organizations have these huge committees that are thinking about AI transformation with 25 people on there, and the very nature of what we're doing with the transformation is all about agility and resilience and change management. And having 25 people tell you what can and cannot be done is not the answer. It's all about, like, having a small agile team that will move things along quickly. So I would say that is the first learning. The second is, don't feel pressured by what other people are doing, or looking at big tech and saying, this person did this, or that organization did that, so I'm going to do the same thing, because obviously they've gotten value and they've done their homework. Well, we've really seen actually that no, that's not true. Lots of big tech organizations have rolled out stuff and have had to pull them back or do various things, right? So for us, we've been thoughtful. Small doesn't mean we're moving so fast that we're not being thoughtful. And we have a great set of ELT members where we have folks that look after risk and think that through. So there's a good pull and push, where we have the ability to have a dialogue and a conversation, and there's that healthy tension that sometimes feels like, oh man, do we really have to have this conversation? But when we finish the conversation, we're like, oh, we're so much better for this, because we've really thought quite differently about how we execute and deploy this, right, to our employee base. And the third thing I would say is, think about highlighting wins, early wins, to the organization as a whole, right? Because there's nothing that's cooler and sexier than success and having some good wins under your belt. So, what forums do you have where you can actually share that mindset? Because it's a mindset shift, it's not a technology shift, for sure. That's what we've uncovered.
And speaking of wins, going back to the story of the product employee
Yeah.
who completely recrafted their role and basically worked themselves out of a job, but now they're on to something else. I imagine this is something that you want to see across the company, and you want more employees to have that same type of mindset, but it's hard to drive that behavior change across 4,000 employees. And so I'm just curious, like, how are y'all codifying this? Like, are y'all putting in place like AI fluency expectations? And are you baking in some of these success stories into those?
Yeah. So we're starting our journey there. So we have a really well baked AI fluency expectations when we hire from the outside. So we have a good rubric, we have skills and hard skills, soft skills that we measure. And, we've gotten really much better at that over the last couple of months. From an internal perspective, we've, as I said, right, we're new to the journey, not new in terms of, some parts of the business, but unilaterally through the other functional groups in the business. So, what I would say is that this is going to become really important moving forward in terms of how we define the behaviors and then reward those behaviors, because what we all know is what gets rewarded gets done. So how we build that fluency rubric that we've created to hire folks in and deploy it through the whole employee life cycle, right, whether it's from hire to retire, and how do we measure it and how do we reward for it. And I will say that you don't want everybody in the organization like upending everything, right? So you have to be careful about how you manage the change. And for us, it's very much about, definitely the talk track for us, which we really strongly believe in, is that how you're getting uplift from using technology, any technology. And, today it's AI. I think it's a big industrial revolution of our time, but, it is technology. And how do you, that's the main focus of our message, right? How do you get uplift? How can you do the things that you most enjoy doing and take away some of the drudgery, in functional groups? But then there are few people where they're focused on, let's transform exactly what we're doing today and move to a new continuum. So you have to be thoughtful about it. It's not, there's no one size that fits all. And if you get into this thinking, oh, all the 4,000 people that we have are going to do something different, that's not the goal for us, for sure not.
One massive challenge that we've heard from HR leaders, and I feel like this is hundreds of HR leaders that we've heard this from now, is that with AI adoption, there is still a lot of fear, uncertainty, doubt, lack of trust. And, all of that can be a blocker to your fluency goals.
Yep.
And one of the things that came up in our prep call is the notion, and I think someone should have coined this. I can't believe whoever first originally said that AI is not taking your job. It's people who know how to use AI. I feel like that's a quote should be attributed to someone because we're all saying that, but it's so true. And so, and I feel like this is super relevant in the fluency conversation, because it's one thing to say that on a podcast or say that on a panel, but how do you convince your employees that is actually the truth for the company? And so how do you communicate that message in a way that you think motivates employees instead of creating fear?
It's a really good question. Actually, I will say to you, what has been surprising to me is that I have not heard fear-based conversations around AI at Omnissa. That conversation, or that set of the noise level on those conversations is much, much lower than I actually would have thought it would have been, right? The noise on the how can I get it and how can I, give me an enterprise tool. I want to be able to play around and think about how I can do my job completely differently, or I can, rewire the way I think. People are clamoring for it, which is actually really heartening for me to see, because from my peers, I hear the opposite, right, in the industry. So there's something about our culture where we've not gone so fast so quickly, where we've raised a framework and a foundation for the change, right, which makes me feel good. We're not done, we're just starting on our journey, so that might change over time, but I've definitely seen that the noise on the give me a tool and let me use it is much, much louder than, oh, I'm worried about it, right? The other thing you talked about in terms of fluency is, and why people feel worried, because change is something that people naturally worried about, right? You're moving their cheese, is this whole idea of, I think, organizations needing trust and thinking about their relationship with their manager and their leader in a trust-based equation. And in tech these days, we've lost a lot of that. When you think about employee engagement and trust, and you think about how people have been making people decisions, that I think is the basis for eroding trust. And when people are worried about change, it comes from this continuum of trust. I strongly, strongly believe that. So we're focused on actually being very open and honest with our teams and our leaders. And we want to talk about it and create buzz about AI rather than it being a dampener, right? So that's our approach. That has been approach that we've taken now. I'm sure we'll have a lot of roadblocks down the road. But to date, we've not seen that conversation being that loud in the organization about fear.
I think the very thoughtful, intentional approach is the right one. And you're right, there is a lot of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt right now. Every single one of my friends that works in corporate is saying the engagement is at an all-time low at their companies.
Yep.
Every single one, like 100%. It's bummed me out the last few weeks, like talking to all of my buddies, and everybody has the exact same story. And I think it's because a lot of companies didn't have that thoughtful approach. There was this mandate and
Yes.
a sense of urgency that
Yep.
led to people building a lot of things that may or may not have worked and
Yeah.
potentially exposing the companies in different ways. Like I have one friend who just got promoted to like a director of client ops role, and this is what he's in charge of. They're like a 10,000 person company, tons of clients, and their client success team, all the different teams were just going rogue, creating solutions left and right. And now he's being tasked to come in, do an assessment across teams, make sure that data from clients isn't being leaked, that
Yep.
everybody's on the same tech stack, that they're doing it in a thoughtful way. And I think that probably could have been avoided if they had a more intentional approach from the beginning. And so
Yep.
thanks for calling that out. We only have a few minutes left, and we did want to squeeze in a few questions about performance management. And do
Sure.
you have something to say real quick?
No, 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 no. I want to make sure that you cover what you need to cover. So
No, if you have any thoughts, jump in.
there you go.
So it feels like a lot of the use cases that we're hearing about, on HR podcasts or HR LinkedIn are related to recruiting. There's a
Yeah.
lot of TA, workflows or bots being spun up. We
Yeah.
hear a little bit less on the performance management side. And
Yeah.
it sounds like at Omnissa, there are some things that might be in the works here. And
Yep.
so I was wondering if you could share a little bit about that. Even if
Yeah.
you're like in the very early stages, would love to hear about any experiments that might be coming
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, I mean, when people hear performance management, they think, oh, they go dark place. That's not the place I'm going to. What we want to do is our use case definition is how do we make performance conversations more joyful and take away the operational work of it and give managers and employees the tools and the time to have a real good conversation about development and about goals and about achievement and making sure that people can bring their best selves to work to get to the outcome for the company, right? So that's what I mean. So where we are focused on from a use case perspective in my team is how do I take the 237 hours on an average that people are spending and reduce that to 50 hours or 70 hours, because, or 50 is our thinking right now, but anywhere between 50 to 70, and create a culture of ongoing development and feedback giving, so to speak, and reduce the kind of the tax of the whole development and performance conversation bit, right? Which is I need to fill in a form, I need to fill in I need to document all of this stuff, I need to, so that all that stuff we can use AI for. All of that stuff we can use AI for. We can take away all of the drudgery of having a good development conversation or good performance conversation with your manager, and we can just focus on the conversation and then make that really, really a great experience for people. And that's what we're focused on, reducing the hours that people spend on all of the, let me type this up, let me put your goals in. That can be automated and we can use AI for, and we've seen that we can actually. And we've been partnering with our IT team to use the tools that we're going to deploy organizationally and make sure they work for us to take away that drudgery.
So let's fast forward 6 months.
Yep.
You've been able to continue executing
Mm-hmm.
on all your sprints and rhythms that you have in place.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that, looking back, do you think you'll be most proud of, when you think about, the work you've completed? I was about to ask another, if I go deep in performance management, we'll be here all day and we need to get you out of here. So fast forward 6 months, what do you think, what are some of the things that you guys have in the pipeline? You said you're launching the new tool that's going to happen next week. You're going to be releasing that to your employees. But, what are some of the other things that, you and the team are, have in your sights? Or maybe it's just an idea you have or a belief or a hope that you have for the next couple of quarters that you'll be able to accomplish.
I'm hoping this is not just an AI question, but a broader conversation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely broad. Yeah, absolutely broad.
So the great thing about being in the organization for 5 months now is, next week we have our all hands and we're going to unveil people's strategy or our people experience,
Ooh.
which is super exciting, right? And the reason it's exciting is the first thing is we've never had a strategy that we've articulated and talked to the organization about. So that's important. And our strategy is very clearly aligned to the org strategy. And so people can see that alignment very clearly. And there's a lot in there about, making Omnissa a place where employees thrive. This focus on having a good employee experience and creating a culture where people feel that they can thrive is something that's very important in our strategy. So we're going to focus on that and talk about all of the things we're doing. I talked about development days. We're going to do them every quarter. We're going to focus the first one on AI, but it's generally a development day. The concept around it is that it's going to be a day globally. And we're a super global organization where people can come together and have peer-to-peer learning. So it's not about someone teaching a class. It's about you learning from your peers. And we'll focus the first one on AI. We'll have different focus areas for the other ones. So that's something that we're committing to doing. We're also going to slowly introduce this concept of the year of the manager. So we're going to focus a lot on what does a manager need to do? How can we support managers from a development perspective, but also from a tooling and support perspective, so that they can, we know that the single biggest uplift from an employee's engagement is via their manager, right? Employees join organizations and leave managers. So we want to be able to focus on creating that great experience via the manager. So we'll do a lot there. And then we'll, do a lot on building a community, building communities in the organization through globally, because, we have such a global workforce. But I call our strategy, our strategy is quite different from how we used to operate before, because we're going to really think globally. And I love this word global. We have a global mindset with local relevance. So that's going to come across really strongly. So these are some of the things that we're launching over the next few months, Stephen. And then we're, for the first time in a long time, we did this 2 years ago, we're going to have a new employee engagement and listening tool that we'll roll out.
Thank you.
Yes.
We have not had a conversation. We spoke for years about engagement and EX, and everyone seems to be divesting. So I know y'all are on the right. I feel like you're definitely on the right track, Omnissa, because it's so important. And
it's so important. And
anyhow,
it's
that's another rant I'll go on. And I know we need to let you go, Daniel.
Yeah, we'll skip rapid fire questions and go straight to one word close. But before we go to one word close. Suni, we are going to follow up with you in 6 months, and you're going to come back and we're going to talk about all of these amazing things that you're working on.
I'll just say it's not me, it's my team. So,
Well, maybe you can bring a team member.
Exactly.
Oh, we'd love that. Love that. Love that. I'd prefer that.
And so one word or phrase close. This is how we end every episode. Could be anything that's coming to mind for you as we wrap up. And it could be one word or it could be a few.
Given what we just talked about and all of the things we're doing, I think this sentence makes a lot of sense. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Oh, I love that. I think I heard that for the first time like a month or two ago, and I couldn't get out of my head for like a week or two.
Proverb, which I love. So true.
I'm going to say intentional. Steven, what do you got?
I'm going to go with HR CTO. That's going to be the winning pair. I really do think. People and bots, humans and machines, that's going to be the future. So this has been so much fun. Truly flew by. I can't believe we're at time. Thank you so much, Suni, for joining us. You're part of our family now, so we will definitely have you back. It's been a lot of fun.
And for me too. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Suni.
Sorry.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Modern People Leader. We really, really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star rating. It would mean the world to us. And connect with us on LinkedIn. We want to know what you think about the show, and you can find links to both of our profiles in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and see you on the next episode.